The Home Pros Radio Show.
I'm Tommy Donovan with RIC Home Inspections, and this is the Home Pros Radio Show podcast. In this episode, we turn our attention to your electrical system and a concern I hear often on home inspections. I have aluminum wiring in my home. What do I do? Well, there's no way to answer that question appropriately without gathering some additional information about your electrical system. This is because there is acceptable aluminum wiring, but there are also some cases where your aluminum wiring can present a hazard. Shane and I attempt to tackle this somewhat complicated answer on the show.
I've got a question from Jeff in Inman. My home inspection report noted that I have copper electrical wiring for the 110 electrical circuits, which is normal, but it also noted copper and aluminum present for the 220 circuits. Now, I understand, this is Jeff typing, I understand that aluminum wiring is considered a fire hazard. Should I be concerned? So he has a good question there. Aluminum wiring was used, for those who are not aware, in homes throughout the country, and what would you say, from the mid-60s to early 70s?
Early 70s, yeah.
And that was something that we did very prominently, mainly because of the Vietnam War. We want to save money on copper. Copper was obviously going to other resources, so we thought of the bright idea to let's make it out of aluminum. Let's make aluminum wiring. Now, at the time, it sounded like a great idea, but as with a lot of things in home construction and home design, as we come up with products, I always tell folks that home construction and building codes are a series of trial and error. And it's interesting to look at codes and look at standards over time, because it really is a series of builders and manufacturers going, hey, great idea, let's try this. And then it's like, oops, this burns houses down. Yeah. Probably should change our standards.
Yeah, I'm never one that wants to be the experimental guy on the new products. And I try to wait to let them, when they first came out with PEX piping, I was scared. I didn't want anything to do with it. But now it's actually been proving, and it works. It's proven and it works. So, but yeah, first, I'm never one to want to experiment with the things when they first come out. I'd rather somebody else experiment than I'll use it after that.
And there are a number of things that we do nowadays that they're new ways of ventilating crawl spaces now, or at least keeping them moisture proof. New ways of insulating our attics that we've been doing for about 5-6 years or so now, at least. And I'm still kind of like, we'll see in about another 10 years if we're still doing this.
Give it a little time.
Yeah. So like with aluminum wiring, that was the case. We started installing it, and at first it was a great idea, but then we realized here's the issue with aluminum wiring is that it is more malleable, which means it's a softer metal than copper. So once you actually make your electrical connections at your switches, at your fixtures, at the lugs, at your circuit breaker panel, what happens is you tighten those lugs down, and then the aluminum, those lugs will clamp down on that aluminum. But what happens is with the expansion of heat and then the contraction of cooling down again that goes through naturally and through metals as currents running through it, what ends up happening is that metal, because it's malleable, it's softer, it expands and contracts easier, it tends to work its way loose, correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I mean, I've actually gone into some panels with aluminum wiring, and it's almost like the screw has been backed out. But yeah, the heat dissipation, it doesn't dissipate heat as well as copper, and I mean, it actually expand and contract until it's a very loose connection.
That's one of the reasons for the nerds out there who do know electrical. That's one of the reasons why when we're running electrical wiring, we got to upsize the gauge of the wire. I know we've talked about this before on the show, is that we have, if you have a circuit breaker of a certain size, then you're required to have wiring of a certain size. You want it, or it's a minimum size in order to keep things safe. So what happens though, Shane, when that wiring works loose at those connections?
Loose connections cause heat. Heat causes fires. And that's basically how that's it. That's pretty much the end of it there. I mean, yeah, anytime you have a loose connection, loose connections do cause heat, and heat causes fires. I mean,
and then what current, even if you have a loose connection, that current is still going to try to complete its path through the circuit. And what ends up happening is if a connection is loose enough, then if it can, the current will use air to complete that circuit, or to complete movement. Mm-hmm. So in electrical terms, we call that arc. In real life terms, we call it spark.
True.
That's one of the reasons why nowadays we have arc fault circuit breakers. I mean, that's a whole other show right there.
Oh, yeah.
We can talk about the safety purposes of those types of things. But what ends up happening is if you have a loose connection, the electricity, the current's going to use that air to continue its path. You get a spark, and of course, building materials, if they're nearby, they're going to ignite. So there were issues with aluminum wiring. So we decided that wasn't a good idea. Now, back to Jeff's question. He's saying, well, the 110 electrical circuits in my house are copper, but the 220 say copper and aluminum. What does that mean? What are the 110 circuits?
Oh, your receptacles, lights, those, your basic everyday things. And then your 220s are more like your appliances, water heaters,
and those are the circuit breakers. When you look at your panel, will have two panel levers.
They
tied
take up
together.
2 spaces.
Yep, exactly. Those are higher drawing circuits. So you have circuit breakers that are 30 amps, 40 amps, or even more. So naturally, as we discussed earlier, the more current you draw, the thicker the wiring needs to be. Your 110 circuits are just your outlets and switches. For those, we run a single strand of wire to connect everything. With a copper wire, it's fine because it can withstand the heat and the expansion and contraction a lot better than aluminum, which gets softer. When you're only making one connection, it increases the chance of the arcing. But interestingly enough, we still use aluminum in 220 circuits. That's because of the fact that we use stranded wire for those thicker cables. So in other words, even with copper, if we go above a 10 gauge.
Above a 10, it becomes stranded.
Above it, yeah. So once we get into 8 gauge, 6, it goes in even numbers, and gauges actually go down, which is a little confusing. But once you get to that size, you're stranding the wiring. So
I mean, even the power companies wire.
Yeah.
I have people tell me sometimes, I don't want any aluminum in this house. I'm like, well,
I got news for you.
The power company's not going to change their wire to copper. Imagine the money they would have tied up if they ran copper to every house, 4-aught copper. But, so yeah, you're always going to have the aluminum, but the stranded, you don't have the issues that you have with the, with solid.
No worries there. You're good. But, what do you do if you do have aluminum wiring? What's the fix?
Rewiring the house.
That's there are methods of fixing it that folks will use to, use special connectors at every light fixture and every switch and, every connection, because that's where the issue is. But that's still not foolproof.
Yeah, it's there are ways to do that. You can make the connections with lugs or wire nuts. There's different ways to connect aluminum and copper together. And then there are still devices, the switches and receptacles that are rated for aluminum and copper. The ones you just go by every day aren't. Mm-hmm. So it's a special one that is rated for both. Even then, if I had aluminum in my house, I wouldn't worry about it because I know how to work on it. But I would check inside my panel. Probably twice inside my electrical panel just to tighten up the lugs. But you're comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with that. I wouldn't necessarily recommend people if it's a good option to rewire it, if it can actually be done fairly easily, I'd say do it. Mm-hmm. Now if you've got a 2-story house, finished basement, it sort of changes the game because now you can't access where all the lights are and where all the wires are. You're going to have to tear up quite a bit to rewire that house. Mm-hmm. So, it just depends on the circumstance, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I look at it as, what is your sleep at night factor? You go to bed every night feeling okay, that it's okay. So, this is your home and you want to take care of it and you don't want to have to worry about stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Worry-free living is what we're all about on the Home Pros Radio Show, and we aim to help you stay that way by working to keep you properly informed. This is the only way that you will be prepared to adequately address issues in your home when they arise. But remember, accurate information is important. Even the most well-meaning home inspector, realtor, or even contractor can lead you in the wrong direction without proper attention to detail. Take, for instance, this scenario involving a home's water pressure and a leaky water heater.
I did a home inspection and the water heater, the TPRV, was dripping. The temperature and pressure relief valve was dripping.
Yep.
A realtor called up and was like, "Did you check the water pressure?" And I was like, "No, not particularly. I didn't feel like there was a need to do so." And there's a reason why home inspectors generally don't. There are some that do, some that don't. It's kind of one of those extra services that's home inspectors home inspectors are typically trying to offer a service or do something a little extra here and there to differentiate themselves. One of the reasons why checking the water pressure can be tricky is, in this particular case, you could tell that the contractor who had gone out to see the home had maybe tried to predetermine what the cause of this drippy valve was. I mean, by maybe they can adjust the water pressure to keep it from happening, but that may not be the fix. And one of the things that's troublesome about home inspectors checking water pressure, just so folks know, is what you need when you're checking water pressure is the highest water pressure that you would have in, say, like a 24-hour period. Right. Mm-hmm. So, when home inspectors are at homes, we're only out there for about 2 or 3 hours. So let's say I'm doing the home inspection in the morning and I check the water pressure when everyone's getting ready for work and getting out the door. Well, you might have in the house, because of all the usage in that particular house, water pressure might be a little lower than normal. However, if I'm in the afternoon doing the home inspection, I might get a higher reading because, chances are the homes around the home we're inspecting are not using any water, so that as a result causes more pressure on each individual home as the valves are being opened up. We kind of talked a little bit about this in our plumbing episodes, and you can find out more about that in our podcast series on plumbing. So the idea behind actually using a home inspector's information on whether or not water pressure is high or not in a home can be a little tricky. Just because it's in a home inspection report, I would say don't say it's written in stone.
Right.
It can fluctuate, right? Mm-hmm. So in this particular case, again, the other thing we want to refrain from is pre-diagnosing something before we really know what the issue is. Turns out that this water heater just had a bad TPRV. It just needed to be replaced.
Yeah, if it's leaking, there's several different things. I mean, mm-hmm. if I see one, there's a process I go through. I eliminate one, then eliminate the next, and eliminate the next. And I always tell people I may end up changing something that is not faulty by the time I get to the end, because you basically start with the less expensive repairs mm-hmm. and work your way to the more expensive repairs. Mm-hmm. Ideally, it's anytime you troubleshoot, that's what makes the most sense, is work from the cheapest repair to the most expensive repair.
And that's what's going to help you ensure that you have the right repair done, because they could have easily just adjusted the water pressure. If you could adjust the water pressure on the pressure regulator on the water main, mm-hmm. that might stop the dripping right now, but mm-hmm. what happens when everyone comes home again, or whatever.
Right. Yep.
So those are things to keep in mind, is follow the proper procedures when trying to diagnose a repair on the home.
On a lighter note, what would be the procedure you would follow if you suddenly experienced a donkey falling through your roof? As crazy as that sounds, it's a scenario that a family in Brazil were faced with, and we had fun sharing it on the show.
How to handle donkeys on your roof.
I would hope I didn't have to deal with that too much.
Well, there was an unusual incident at a home in Brazil. It was caught on camera when a wandering donkey fell through the roof of someone's house.
What would you think if you saw a donkey falling through your house?
I'd say, hey! First thing, I would think, I don't know, apparently in Brazil it's commonplace. The video, which we're going to post to Facebook and Twitter this morning so you folks get a chance to see it, it's pretty funny. It starts with the donkey's legs dangling from a hole in the roof as the residents in the home look on in astonishment. Eventually the donkey kicks itself free and falls to the floor, which is able to quickly get back to its feet. According to the person who shot the footage, the home is located next to a small hill, which apparently made it easy for the donkey to unintentionally wander onto the roof of this home. So, according to that person, the donkey did not suffer any injuries. It looks pretty bad at first, but the donkey does just get up and...
It could definitely create some injuries.
It's a high roof. It's probably at least a 10-foot roof. Ceiling.
Maybe donkeys are used to falling from high. I wouldn't think so, but who knows?
He was alive and kicking when it was done. Well, actually, apparently.
Be here all day, guys.
I'm glad you like my jokes so much. The donkey did not suffer any injuries during the incident. He's apparently in stable condition.
Well, you just loaded with them.
I am. All right.
I've got one, but I don't want to say it on air.
What? Oh, okay. Well, I bet you do.
He really made a of himself.
Here, I'll
go
just
ahead,
give it to
there
you. There you go.
I didn't want to say it on there.
All right. Way to go.
Donkeys through the roof. Thankfully, something we don't have to deal with here in the United States. For a more serious approach to your home's roofing system, check out episode 30 of the Home Pros Radio Show podcast, where the folks at Freedom Roofing educated us on common issues with your home's roofing system. Check it out and don't forget to share it with those who could also benefit from what we learned. Well, thank you for it. Well, I'm out of time to share with you on this episode of the Home Pros Radio Show podcast. Do me a favor and click subscribe so it's easier for us to connect every time we release a new episode of our show for you. Until then, I'm Tommy Donovan with RIC Home Inspections and your co-host for the Home Pros Radio Show.
Thank you for listening to the Home Pros Radio Show. If you have a question for the Home Pros, visit us online at homeprosradio.com, where you can contact us directly and also learn more about the topics and guests we bring to you each week. It's the Home Pros Radio Show online at homeprosradio.com or on the radio at 94.5 WGTK, The Answer.